morning, Trainiacs. We are at the end of a rest week, and it's like tolerable outside, about -8 Celsius. So I'm gonna get off of that treadmill. I got like no specific run to do, just, I don't know, go for like 40, 45 minutes, whatever I feel like. It's the first time I've been outside running in like 2 months. So what we're gonna do here today is, after I do this run, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk about how to run around freezing, a little bit colder than freezing, and bloody cold. And I'm gonna talk about tricks like using surgical gloves to keep your hands warm. Should you or should you not use spikes on your shoes or yak tracks? Probably the biggest thing that people get wrong. And we're gonna see how it goes. I think it's slippery out there, very powdery. Was actually quite enjoyable. I haven't really done a nice winter run all season. I've been traveling too much, or it's been too cold or too slippery. That was good. All right, let's go through winter running. That is disgusting. I'll explain. Ew. Ugh. All right, so let me start by giving you some of the guidelines for winter running. Winter running is not your race effort kind of mileage. If you are in a place like where I am, where you are training for a very key race, and there, 10.5 kilometers at a 5:48 pace. So it was an hour, basically, on the nose. Now, the reason that I say this isn't your race pace kind of efforts when you start getting into strength and speed season, or race season in particular, is because of exactly that. Your pace is off because your footing is off, the traction is off, your breathing is off because the air is thinner. So good runs to do in the winter are your base building miles, your off-season miles, just kind of your slow and steady miles. And a good thing to work on at this point, because the footing is so off, is actually speeding up your cadence, is getting off the ground quicker, reducing your ground contact time. Because if you can do that when you're in the snow, you're going to be able to get off the ground really quickly when you've got good footing on pavement. Now, as far as dressing goes, good guideline for are you dressed properly is, are you cold for the first 5 to 10 minutes? If you are, that's good. Now, you don't want to be absolutely shivering cold, but certainly chilled. Because what's going to happen is your body is gradually going to heat up, and eventually you're going to end up sweating. Like I was cold and thinking about like, oh geez, my hands are just freezing for the first 10 minutes. And then warmed up, by the end of it, completely enjoyable. Let's get into how to dress basically if it's around freezing, below freezing, or really below freezing. Here are all the goodies that you can intermix based off of the temperature that you are dealing with and the specific conditions. So if it's around freezing, you want to get yourself a pair of merino tights. Merino is your friend because you can sweat in it and it doesn't end up stinking, getting gross long term. It also has a little bit of warmth even as it is wet, whereas a lot of synthetic fibers, when they get wet, they stop being warm. So when it's around freezing, we're talking like give or take just a few degrees, get yourself a pair of merino full-length tights, and then over top of that, I just put on a standard pair of running shorts just to break the wind from your bits. That's about it. As far as socks go, just one layer of thicker socks, but we're not talking like really thick insulative socks, just not super thin like cycling socks, just kind of like regular socks. For a top, merino wool, again, is your friend. So a thin merino top could be icebreaker, could be smart wool, but a nice thin top to do the same thing as the tights. And over top of that, you can use just almost like a see-through, windproof vest or long sleeve. Like this is basically just a wind shell because it's going to trap in that heat. And when you're right around freezing, think about 15 degrees warmer. If you're just standing around, you wouldn't need a ton of insulation. So a thin wind shell on the outside. Toque is optional. Some people call it an insulated cap or beanie. We're Canadians. This is a toque. And then one layer of small mitts. And I recommend mitts or lobster claw gloves, not actual gloves, because when you've got your fingers together, they kind of warm each other up and you can get a little bit of friction with them between each other. That's about it around freezing. What about when it is below freezing? Something like today where it was about -12 Celsius. I want to say that's like right around 0 Fahrenheit. As far as socks go, you go with maybe just one layer of thicker insulated socks as opposed to the thinner socks that we did around freezing, because you need a little bit of insulation for those tootsies. We bring back the same tights. You don't have to double up or get those any thicker, but on the outside, instead of the shorts, you can put on a full wind pant with maybe even just a little bit of insulation. We again bring back the merino wool top, and you can at this point make it a little bit thicker. I don't really like bulking up the jacket too much, but instead bulk up on your base layer. This is 100 weight merino wool from Icebreaker. This is a 200, so just a little bit different. We bring out a wind shell for the jacket that has just a little bit of insulation on it, but you would actually look at this and say, how do you take that outside? This was made by Scody, which makes basically all my gear, and they said, oh yeah, this is like what we wear when it's like 10 degrees outside. Well, it's also what I wear when it's -10 degrees outside. I just bulk up a little bit on the inside. Toque is a complete must. Neck warmer, optional. Just if you like being cozy around here, you can do that. And at this point, we go with mitts, and the trick of these gross surgical gloves is that they don't breathe whatsoever. So any moisture that is coming off of your hand is going to basically collect and get gross in there, but it's also going to be really, really warm. Trick to that though is try not to stop, because if you stop and you expose this cold, damp hand, you're going to get quite chilled. Ew. And what about when it's outright cold? This is outright winter weather. Totally doable. I ran down to about -25 Celsius, somewhere around, I think that's -10 to 15 Fahrenheit, with a wind chill on top of that. You can stick with the same tights that you've got on the base layer, have the same leggings that have some insulation, but I would add a wind brief to keep your bits and pieces from tipper getting cold. I would put on 2 layers of socks, the thicker socks from the last temperature and the socks from the first temperature. These are going to keep your feet basically dry. These are going to keep your feet warm. Definitely the thicker merino wool top. And if you start getting quite cold, I mean, you can run in this thinner shell with a little bit of insulation, probably down to about -15 or 20 Celsius. I don't know what that calculates to in Fahrenheit, -10 or so. But if you really want to start running in cold weather, what you can get is a windproof shell, always windproof on the outside, and look for Primaloft. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's Primaloft insulation. Primaloft insulation is a synthetic fabric that is made from natural fabric, but the nice part about it is that it can get soaked, absolutely soaked, but still maintain its insulative qualities. So that is an excellent thing. The Summit series from North Face, and this is just a really, really thin jacket that I've worn actually throughout the winter walking around because it's so warm. Toque and neck warmer, a total must. You might, if it's really windy, want to have like a full head shell that is windproof. Glasses, a complete must to make sure that there are no exposed areas of skin around here. This tends to freeze and get quite cold. And you might want to consider goggles, but I find that they fog up pretty easily. These at least have a little bit more air kind of coming in and around them, and it keeps like the cold air off your eyes while keeping enough air circulating around so that it's not getting frosted up. As far as gloves go, thicker mitts, not these little thin ones, but we're talking big, thick mitts with, again, surgical gloves underneath. And if it gets extremely cold, put another layer of magic mittens over top of those surgical mitts. Now the big question is what you do about shoes. Everyone, when they start running in the winter, me included, thinks I need to get studs put in my shoes. I need to screw some traction into there. I need to get some yak tracks. There's a lot of people that, even coaches out there that come from the southern states that are like, oh yeah, yak tracks is what you need. Well, we up here are experts at running in the winter. Very, very few of us actually run in yak tracks or anything like that. And the reason for that is that there's two things. Number one is that it doesn't work in all conditions. It works in a perfect, soft snow, slightly packed kind of condition, but the situations that you're going to be running in are real life. And you're gonna go from packed snow to soft snow to ice. And what's gonna happen is there's going to be some of those situations where those studs or yak tracks are actually much more slippery than regular shoes. And a lot of people end up going down, especially with those coils and yak tracks. Now beyond that, it alters your regular running stride, which I think is probably the bigger issue because it can lead to chronic injury that you don't even notice in your feet, in your knees. You change how you're running, you're a little bit more gentle. What I would recommend, this is actually what Sarah True recommends, she comes from New Hampshire where she runs in the snow quite regularly, is just getting a little bit beefier a shoe, something that has maybe just a little bit of extra kind of grittiness underneath, more edges, more kind of edge area to push off of. And in my case, right now, what I would recommend is having a shoe size that's larger. So this shoe is actually an entire size larger than what I regularly run in. And I've done that so that I can fit that extra sock in. So do all that and you can actually have a quite enjoyable experience running in the winter. Now, you're not going to get in your quality runs at this, but it's going to be a nice change from the mind-numbing experience of running on a treadmill. Of course, when you start getting into race season and you've got to go on a treadmill, I'd recommend something like Zwift running with the Stride running foot pod. And at that point, it starts getting a little bit more interactive and coming inside isn't so bad. You can get those quality runs in, and because you've been running outside with really good form, getting off the ground really quickly, you've got a huge base of fitness that when you start sharpening up at those race efforts, you're ready to go. There you go, Trainiacs. I have a lot of repacking up to do. Later.